Ooh. Oh man. Yeah, it's still the morning. I'm still waking up. Good morning. Episode 16. We are at episode 16. This is so wild. I'm loving this. This episode today features the wonderful mezzo-soprano and composer Lisa Neher. It was so exciting talking to Lisa because we've never actually met. And like previous episodes, a lot of people I've spoken with, I've never met as well. But I always like it. I always like having that introduction just through this conversation because we get pretty detailed and go in depth with things. And speaking with Lisa, we just kind of bounced around all over the place. It was so much fun. I mean, we talked about her moving from Portland to the Midwest, meeting her fiance, moving back to Portland, writing for The Voice, time as a resource for creativity. We talked about sci-fi films. We talked about flamethrowers. It was just such an exciting and fun conversation. I really enjoyed talking with her. And she has some really cool projects coming up too. So one thing that she has is the One Voice Project Micro Opera Festival. And this is taking place from March 22nd to the 26th. And it features one new miniature 5-minute opera premiere will be released each day on YouTube at 5 p.m. Pacific time. The operas are written by Lisa and Kendra Leonard and performed by opera singers across the United States, including Lisa. The festival is pay as you can. That's gracious. And people can watch in real time or anytime afterward. So once it's published on YouTube, it will always be there. The festival culminates in a talkback reception with the artists, which requires RSVP link. So in order to be a part of that, got to find the link, RSVP. I'll link to all this stuff in the description and show notes, so you can check it out. But yeah, that sounds incredibly exciting. I'll be tuning in for sure. Another thing that Lisa offers is she is a artistic and business coach for composers, particularly anyone interested in the areas of composing for voice. So I would highly recommend contacting Lisa if that is you. If you want to write for voice, Lisa is the person to go to. She will help that you make that happen, and helping you find connections with choirs and singers and stuff like that. So some other announcements for me. I will be at the Kimmel Harding Center in Nebraska for a 3-week residency. I'm so excited to go there. I haven't ever been to Nebraska. I've never been farther west than Chicago, so this is, a new venture for me. But it'll give me a lot of time to work on some projects I have coming up, and working on things with the podcast. So yeah, looking forward to that. I believe those are all the announcements. So yeah, thank you all for watching. As always, if there's a platform you would like for the podcast to be featured on, please contact me. I will gladly add it to the platform of your choice. Please like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, let's make some noise. My name is Alan Kanal, and I am a collaborative composer. Join me in the search for a career in classical music. This is the Making Noise podcast. I'm so glad that we were able to line this up. I mean, how is everything in Portland? Because you didn't have power for a period there.
Yeah, I guess when you think about people in Houston and in Texas, it's all so relative. We're okay. I mean, I still feel like I kind of lost a week of February, and February is already sort of a short month.
Mm-hmm.
So we lost power for one day, and then we were out of internet for 2 more. So that was kind of the greater part of a week. And since everything's online, what do? You just can't do anything. So it could have been worse. Yeah. But not my favorite moment, for sure. Because actually life's kind of full, even though we're in, lockdown or whatever, Yeah. How about yourself?
Yeah.
I think it's been pretty clean here. I mean, we haven't had any power issues. Chicago has gradually gotten warmer, which has been nice. And you know, there was some bitter cold days there, which
Yeah.
in some ways is nice. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like getting that bite of cold air, and like it sort of rejuvenates you in a way, but only for so long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've never been. Chicago is the farthest west I've ever been in the United States. So
What?
yeah, so I don't know. I'm completely green to the West Coast. Like, what is it
Oh,
like in Portland at this time of year?
it's so mild. It's like, yeah, I mean, normally it's like 50s, and a little overcast during the day and like 40s and a little overcast at night. Right now we're having like some actually like partly sunny, partly cloudy skies. There's some sun coming through, so our cat is finding sunspots to sleep on. It's great. I mean, it's March, it's spring, I mean, the bulbs are blooming. We have underneath the ice, right? There were all these, like sprouted green things kind of flattened. And then as the ice melted, uh, they're back, they're fine, so, yeah, it's pretty nice. After I lived in the Midwest for 9 years.
Mm.
And I love the falls in the Midwest, like the crisp and the sun. And growing up here, we never understood books that depicted kids jumping into piles of leaves, because the piles of leaves in the fall here are like wet and gooby and there's slugs in them. And then I went to the Midwest. I'm like, oh, that's where that's from. That's not made up, as it turns out. Yeah. So I do miss that, but I don't miss the winters necessarily.
Yeah, that's the winter is definitely, depending on where you are, it could be a big, well, even on the west too, like in the Rocky Mountains, I imagine is something.
Yeah, I don't know as much about the Rockies because I grew up south of Seattle, and then I went to school in Portland, and then after I left the Midwest, I came back to Portland. So yeah, the Rockies are kind of that halfway point, between Seattle and the Midwest. So
Yeah, that's true. What brought you to the Midwest?
Grad school.
Okay. And
Yeah.
where did you study for grad school?
So I went to University of Kansas and I got a master's in music composition. And what brought me there specifically was Forrest Pierce, who taught composition at Lewis and Clark College, where I went for undergrad. And then about halfway through my time there, he got a job out at Kansas and moved out there. And we stayed in touch and really loved working with him. And so that was wonderful. I sort of followed my mentor. When do you get to do that? It was kind of a unique experience to get to go work with somebody at the grad level at a different school, and then from there I was interested in continuing studying in voice. And so I was looking at either getting a doctorate or a second master's. And once you're in the Midwest, everyone knows and recommends teachers in the Midwest, that's the network. And so I ended up at the University of Iowa, where I got a doctorate in voice, and then worked for a couple years performing, teaching, composing, and just making a plan of what was next. And picked up a fiance on the way, convinced him to come back out here.
Look at this. The Midwest is offering you degrees and a lovely romantic relationship.
Yes.
To take back to the Pacific.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. I have corrupted him with mountains and oceans and hiking and, vegan food. Ooh. So, yeah.
I don't imagine there's much hiking out in the Midwest. So,
I have to eat some humble pie, because when I went to Iowa, I looked up the national parks map and I went, wow, we're so far from a national park. It's hilarious. But the state parks are amazing. And once I got a car, which was not for a while, but once I got a car, there are some beautiful state parks, ravines, and up north in Iowa, there's really really interesting rock formations and, these hikes where you got to see cliffs and you get some good elevation and really, really beautiful forests and trees. So yeah, the state parks are fantastic. They really are. So, it's not the same as scaling a mountain, you kind of have a different landscape that you're looking at, and you're going to be a lot stickier in the summer. you know, but that's
That's very
okay.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more humid. Or at least the farther east you go, I think it's more humid.
It's really humid in the summer. Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. From interviewing, I interviewed at University of Kansas in January or February. And when I I went back to the Pacific Northwest, and then when I moved, I flew out in August, and I thought I had landed in Florida. It was just wet, and the bugs were enormous, and there was green stuff growing everywhere, like explosive. It was really interesting to move to a different ecology.
What was the biggest sort of like I guess like culture shock for you going from the West Coast to the Midwest?
I don't know if there really was, because you go to like Lawrence, Kansas is sort of it's the college town. It's the most hippie of all Kansas. I think one of the things that I felt when I was really gigging and working as a professional in Iowa was my friends in big cities would be on transit for 2 hours to get to gigs, to go like 7 miles or something, or less. And I was driving like 2.5 hours through like rural Iowa between like colleges or little towns, so where you'd lose GPS and you had to just kind of keep driving on this highway and keeping your eye out at 11 o'clock at night for deer and hoping that, because your phone doesn't tell you where you're going anymore, that you're going to see that sign that says like 100 miles to Cedar Rapids this way, and you're just going to keep going. So that to me was sort of an interesting thing as I contemplated where I wanted to move and the pros and cons of like density versus being spread out. What's the difference? I don't know. There are differences, but that to me, I guess, was like a culture, I don't know, shock, but culture consideration moment of how we perceive distance and community and what feels more connected, 7 miles of traffic where you're on transit or you can't have a car or whatever, but there's density, or, 2.5 hours of no traffic, just roads. What kind of connection is that,
I really love what you're saying about this. I mean, because it's something that it's not something that you can easily pick up on when you're going to move to a new location, like especially across the country. So like in your example, like going to a new school or graduate school, whatever you want to say, there's like, if you were to look up like Googling, what's it like to live in Iowa, you're probably not going to see a lot about the things that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
It'll be more like, oh, the winters are this, and like, but they're not going to say like, oh, well, driving these distances, this might create this sort of experience with, like you said, connectivity with like, who you're working with or the access you have. That's sort of something I experienced actually the other day, because I'm originally from northwestern New Jersey, and you more or less have to drive to wherever you want to go. There's not a lot of public transportation.
Sure.
And here in Chicago, it's like what you said, where it takes you 2 hours to drive like 5 miles.
Yeah.
And I love driving. I hated that.
Yeah. That's so interesting. When we were looking at places to live, one of the things we wanted to do was sort of experience the full implications of that, so we spent, a couple days, this was pre-pandemic, this is like 3 or 4 years ago. We just took some years where our vacations were like, let's spend a few days in Seattle, let's spend a few days in San Diego, let's spend a few days in Kansas City, and sort of experience things. And we wouldn't try to like necessarily completely avoid rush hour, because we wanted to see like eyes wide open, what would that look like? And really interesting to think about how that's going to impact your life. And having grown up south of Seattle and been really present as the Seattle boom happened and the implications it had for my parents and work and, things like that. And Seattle and Portland, Portland has, I think, kept up with transit better than Seattle, but it's not like the East Coast. It's not like Chicago. It's a lot younger infrastructure here, and there's a lot of catching up to do. And So that's also really humbling to realize like that's not a problem that's going to get fixed overnight. So if you're going to dig into that eyes wide open, you know.
I like that perspective. That's really interesting. I haven't thought about that. I mean,
Yeah.
Portland and Seattle, how far apart are they?
Oh, it's like, well, I was gonna do time. Uh, it's like 200 miles or something like that.
Oh, I thought it was closer. Wow.
Yeah, so if there wasn't traffic, it would be like 3.5 hours if you went like at 1 a.m. or something. And my parents lived south of Seattle, and my grandma, who I help with some elder care, she lives in Olympia, which is about 60 miles south of Seattle. So like I can go there, and the worst traffic is getting out of Portland, and you can miss that if you go early enough or time it right, And Seattle is very much, the traffic has really exploded, and they're sort of locked in certain ways because of the geography of the city, where the expansion of the highways is not super easy to do because of the sea and how things are built up above land and things like that. And so, yeah, so getting through Seattle is a big deal. Yeah. Definitely. But I mean, I love Seattle. It's wonderful. It's a really, really fun place to visit. And, right before the pandemic, I was starting to get some offers of opportunities to gig up there. And that was going to be super exciting because we are kind of, Seattle and Portland, we have a lot in common. And, we are sort of sister cities in some ways. So I can't wait to realize those dreams when it's safe to do so, on the other side of the pandemic.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to the day where I can walk around no mask and like talk to someone and shake their hand and have that personal interaction. And have you had any engagements lately where you've gotten to actually like go somewhere, like even if it was just like a 2-person performance or something? Or
the one that I've done, there's a wonderful series in town that First Presbyterian Church hosts, a concert series that they went virtual this year. They had me and a pianist colleague of mine, Stephanie Thompson. We had performed a recital of songs about birds and sort of how birds show us different aspects of humanity and of how humans interact with the world. So we had first performed that concert the January of 2020, and we were invited to reprise that. And that was a special situation where, we were able to do that, where they live streamed it from their space, this really large church space. And the only person involved that was unmasked was myself. And so that seemed like a really wonderful, safe way to create music. And then Stephanie is a dear friend, and we were really great about having these conversations about how we were going to, be a little farther apart than normal, and our masking procedures and our other safety habits. So that was great. And it was wonderful to do with such a supportive community, and also with a collaborator that I can speak really openly about and just have a free exchange of what we're doing. Beyond that, no, all of my gigs have been virtual, where I'm not in the same space with other people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly why I asked too. I mean, I imagine that experience must have felt really like, almost nostalgic. It
was so fun, and also sort of confronting, because I kept questioning myself, like, is this really, have I forgotten something? Have I missed something? Is this safe? Because of how I think it's really easy for our brains to try to create some exceptions to the safety protocols that we've been living with. And so I felt some of that, as well. And then so strange that like afterwards, we don't get to hang out or go out and grab a drink, or even, it was January. So we chatted in the parking lot for a couple minutes with our masks on, and then we went to our own homes and sort of toasted, virtually. So it was a little, it's a little melancholy, but also so phenomenal to have the support because most of the other things I've done, I've had to be recording engineer, lighting designer, everything. And so to be invited and to be plugged into an infrastructure where there's somebody up in a booth pointing the camera and adjusting the mics in real time, oh my gosh, that was so phenomenal. And they did such a lovely job. They rebroadcast it the next day. And, they really put a lot of work and effort into creating an experience for the audience. And so that was so wonderful to have partnership in that.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love hearing it. Like, even like the way you're talking about it, it's just, you can tell it was an experience that you're just so excited about.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
That's great. I had, I joined this organization in Chicago, New Music Chicago, which has been awesome. And I like emailed them right away. I'm like, hey, if you need anything, let me know. I want to be doing stuff, And so there's been these live stream performances that have been happening.
Great.
And, I've been helping out with some of the production with that. Me and Marianne Parker. Shout out to me.
Oh, she's so wonderful.
Oh, she's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you worked with her before?
I have. She premiered a piece of mine in December 2019. All those pieces, at the end of 2019 and the start of 2020 are so precious. They always were, but they're like more so because they were some of the last in-person or, normal concert. Yeah. So she premiered a piece of mine with Access Contemporary Music that was a piece to be played entirely inside of a grand piano called Inner World. And that was so fun to work on with her. And she's just a rock star.
That's awesome. She's such a fun person. How did you two connect?
We connected through Seth at Seth Boostad at Access Contemporary New Music. I was invited. I'm trying to think of how Seth got my name, and now I'm blanking. Yeah, just through the network. He had contacted me and invited me to write a piece for the concert. They had several commissions that they were offering, so I was lucky enough to get one of those. And then we connected. At the time it wasn't clear who was going to perform it, so that was a piece that I wrote not knowing who the performer would be, and then we connected in the rehearsal process. And I'd known her name because of different collaborators that we have friends in the same circles, Michael Hall and Megan Enan. So I knew of her work, but that was our first collaboration. And then she was also involved in the curation for the New Music Shelf Anthology of Piano Music. And so that was just getting kicked off, and my piece Fisher for speaking pianist is going to be in that, and she's going to, do a recording or a performance of some kind when possible was the idea. But all of that was sort of going into the works when the pandemic hit. So, it's been a little bit slowed down because of this process, but right. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. It's so funny too that you mentioned Michael Hall and Megan Enan. I mean, like I know, all of them collaborate and stuff, but it's coincidental. Yeah. They all have M names.
Oh my goodness, that's true. It's a conspiracy, clearly.
I feel like it is. Great people have the names, have the letter M in their name.
It's true. I feel like I could be honorarily a part of that. L and N, I'm like sandwiching. I'm like the Oreo cookie around their cream filling. I think I could be, I think I could be a part of that honorary circle.
I think so too. You're right there. You're like,
I'm gonna sandwich myself there.
You're straddling.
Be cool by association. That's my goal in life.
How beautiful is that?
Yes. Totally.
It's a simple way to just to be awesome, just because like you got Megan, Marianne, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that counts. Done. Yes, totally.
Well, not done in the sense that it's like it's over, but like the work is over. Like
we've established the coolness is happening.
I like that.
Move on. Next question. We're cool. We're good. Check.
Exactly. We'll have to get a whole thing going with Marianne, Michael, and Megan, and just I don't know, have at it.
Triple M.
Voice, viola, and piano.
Yes, of course.
That's an interesting combination. Is there a piece for that?
Oh yeah, Brahms' Alto Rhapsody. Oh no, wait, is it Alto Rhapsody or shoot? There's so many Brahms. I'm gonna blank on the name. There's these two Brahms that are like songs of Mary, like nativity songs, but they're like gorgeous. And I don't remember if that's the same as Brahms' Alto Rhapsody or not, because I'm not studying for music history test at the time, and I can look that up. But yes, that comes to mind immediately, this set of Brahms nativity songs. I'm sure there's others. Yeah.
You were ready for that question. That was amazing.
Well, although I'm blanking on the exact name or not sure if I have it right, that was a very special piece that I got to perform with a colleague at U of Iowa. And so that's stuck in my mind. Darn it, I can't remember. I'll look it up.
That's okay. Yeah. I haven't thought about that. I mean, I have almost no experience writing for voice, but you understand that a little bit because I got to be a part of your text setting like a boss workshop.
Yeah.
Which was so awesome.
Oh, I love it. What was a takeaway from you about that? What did you think about?
Yeah, after the sessions, I would talk to my girlfriend about it because I was so psyched. But the thing that I love the most, which I wanted to talk to you about, is how you explained writing for the voice by focusing on the natural tendencies of speaking and the way that the sounds work as a way to as a jumping off point for composing.
Yay.
Right? Like, am I close with that? Is that like, that's
sure? Yeah, of course. I mean, I asked you what you took away, so
yeah, that's what
whatever you say is correct.
So I passed the test. I passed the
totally
awesome. But that's what I liked so much about it. I mean, because I'm not a singer. I did do choir for many years and
great.
Like that. But I'm a guitarist by trade, so that's my my wheelhouse.
That's another instrument that doesn't get taught to classical composers very thoroughly.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's an instrument we need more resources for, and we need more sort of time spent on. And it's so strange because guitar is such a ubiquitous instrument in so many other traditions of music, and such a ubiquitous instrument for singer-songwriter, like composers from that tradition. And then for classical composers to sort of have this like giant question mark, is so strange because it's such a cool instrument.
It's a good point, and it's an interesting thought too, because because like you said, so few composers write for the guitar, and well, I don't want to say few composers write for the voice, but I do think that like your text setting like a boss workshop is that so few composers are understand how to effectively write for both instruments. The voice being an instrument, right?
Sure.
But but going back to the workshop though, it was amazing how oh my god, I wrote all this stuff down. I took it more for just the information to get, to have a little bit, because sooner or later I plan on writing for voice.
Yeah, you better.
I have no idea when that day will be, but hopefully sooner than later.
Why not this year?
I would love that. Yeah. I would absolutely love that. It's such a fascinating instrument. And but what are some things for you going through that sort of workshop? Like it was your sort of, you created it and stuff. What is something from you that you got from it that you walked away and you were like, oh, this is new for me?
I love hearing the questions that the composers ask, because it gives me so many more ideas about where we need to go in these conversations. I have a lot of information about the things that I see as a performer being handed, new pieces or pieces in progress that I'm giving maybe feedback for, or that I'm asked to perform. Sometimes there's a feedback process, sometimes there's not, So I have a lot of that where I'm like seeing the trends of things I'm encountering that, just reflect a little gap, in where that education is, the same way if you got handed a piano piece and there was some fingering, things that were stretches that were really challenging or almost impossible, or, any instrument has these things. So I see those, and I also see the questions that are coming to me with the composers that I coach one-on-one, where we're really getting into the work. of their pieces and their questions, but that's only one slice. And so for those 3 days and for the days leading afterwards, the kinds of conversations that were getting started, and someone was asking about Fach, the sort of German operatic voice classification system that gets really in the weeds, and we touched on it a little, but it honestly is like a huge conversation that it almost needed its own day. So we couldn't get into all the detail, but that went, okay, that's something that there's an opportunity to educate about. And then also the fact that like all the stuff about the artistic side of writing for the voice, or the craft side, dovetails right into the logistics and the business and the getting performances side that composers have these dreams and goals for. And so the conversation really flows from one thing to the next as we talk about the dreams and goals and what composers want ultimately to have happen, which for most people, the composers I talk to, is performances and repeat performances and the opportunity for the work to go out into the world. And so then questions about how to meet singers and how to write for different age groups or experience groups, and what the gaps in the repertoire are and where to find those people, like those flowed out immediately too, even though it wasn't the focus of the conversation, wasn't like getting your music performed a million times, wasn't like the main topic of the 3 days. It was just part of it infused, because that's why so many composers are doing this, is for the final goal of performance, of the music coming to life. So that was really wonderful for me to hear those things coming up and how those questions were coming up for composers.
I like that a lot. I do remember that too. I remember a lot of people asking questions in the chat, and like some of them I was like, oh, that's a really great question.
Yeah.
I don't remember this question specifically, but
how to find lyricists or librettists, like, or really specific things about voice types and differences between like tenor and bass voices versus soprano and mezzo voices, or even what's a mezzo, those questions are really, there's all these, every instrument has, terminology and groupings and sort of trivia, or that's the wrong word because that makes it sound trivial, but like quirky stuff.
Yeah.
And so that can seem really mysterious and can seem overwhelming. I've had a lot of composers tell me I find it overwhelming, the idea of writing for singers. And I can understand that, because like I've never played a string instrument. So for me, that's where I go to emotionally and intellectually when I'm trying to imagine what it's like to be someone who's finding that overwhelming. That was super overwhelming for me as an undergrad, to be like, what do you mean there's multiple ways to finger the same note? I don't understand that, coming out of piano and harp. I mean, harp a little, but it's so much more simple, because the strings, the strings can be multiple pitches, but only as determined by the pedal. It's not, and the finger placement is not the thing on the strings. So I can totally relate to sort of feeling that fish out of water or overwhelm.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective right there, is being a singer and then writing for instruments where, like you said, like, oh wait, there's more than one fingering for that. Yeah, like the guitar, for example, you can play the same note in like 4 different places.
Absolutely.
And depending on where you're playing it, you might have access to different types of notes or even chord shapes. So it's like, even as a guitarist, I get so frustrated playing a song. I'm like, should I play it here or like down here, or like,
Yeah.
Those questions. It can be frustrating.
Well, yes, I can imagine. To me, those are really always such interesting questions whenever I write for guitar, for strings.
Yeah. I find it, for me as a player, at least, like I usually try to lean towards whatever I can make most musical. But at the same time, it's hard to balance, because then the timbre changes,
Right.
And so how does that work? It's an interesting kind of dichotomy.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a performer, but
I was going to ask if you performed your own stuff very often.
Not often. I wrote one piece for guitar that I had performed in my senior recital.
Okay.
But I'm not much of a guitar composer. I don't really want to write for the guitar.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's fine.
It'll call to you if it calls to you.
It'll happen sooner or
Life
later.
is full.
Yeah, yeah. But what is something with if you were to kind of find one thing, and this is like a more personal question with what you want to see for vocal music is, yeah, what is something that you would like to see more composers doing? And whether it's something not so much like what they're doing wrong that oh, you should fix this, but just your own personal preference, like, oh, I'd like to see this more.
I mean, feminist storytelling. I mean, yeah, modern stories, different kinds of stories for sopranos and mezzos, and for different identifying singers, and for tenors and basses, and for male identifying singers, different kinds of stories too. You know, that's the number one thing for me. And you know, I really just don't think we need to go tell 18th century novels. I mean, I love Jane Austen as much as the next girl, but I've done that.
Right.
You know, so I mean, give me Ripley from Aliens, or, you know, give me, you know, give me some new stuff. And, you know, an opera is a ton of time for everyone involved at every stage. If you're talking about like even a shorter opera, it's a ton of time, you know. And so I feel such a fatigue seeing, you know, stereotypical characters being written again and again and again and again. That's fatiguing. I'm so over that. Yeah. We're done.
I sense there's a workshop coming.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Let's do it. The other thing I think too, I mean, my mind went right to opera, but it's not just that, you know, and, you know, I know what happens. I know the first things that come up when you type public domain poetry. I know who those poets are, and I know what poems come up because they're the ones I get handed again and again. So, you know, digging deeper and finding maybe living poets to work with. Because, you know, if you dig into public domain poetry, if that's your place that you're going to, you're talking about older stuff, and it's going to be harder to find feminist stuff to set. And so there's that. There's also just like, okay, the first page of results on Emily Dickinson versus like the 50th page of results on Emily Dickinson. Like, if you're going to do Dickinson, dig deeper. Those are my hot takes. But, you know, and then if it is opera, I mean, story, do you realize it's going to be staged? You know, because I think that the transition from writing concert music into writing staged music, what is that? Because we memorize and there's movement, and from the theater perspective, you can have a play with no lines. You know, you can have drama, you can have physical action. There doesn't ever have to be a line. So there can be this thing where, like, in the transition, I think, from writing like recital song or concert music to writing opera, where there needs to be some time exploring what does that mean? What does it mean to write an opera? What does it mean to put something on stage and to write something with the purpose of there being physical action to do, whether that's in realism or in, you know, an avant-garde style? Any of those is fine, you know, but is that part of the consideration? Because that's a real different thing than standing in a chamber ensemble and singing.
That's amazing. What a great philosophical thought too. What the difference is between just writing concert music and, you know, is there even the approach to it? Is that going to be different? You know, like,
I hope so.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
But yeah, to anyone who listens or watches this episode, Lisa just called it out. Make some more contemporary content for your operas and stuff, people.
Yes, please. Yes.
I love that you brought up Ripley from Aliens, by the way. What a great
thank you.
Oh my God, that closing scene where she's just in her underwear and her shirt, and it's her against that alien. What an expression of the vulnerability of humans.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's part of there's so much in the horror of that entire set of movies, but in the first Alien in particular, that is, the costume and just the vulnerability of people, like you're saying, and the sort of the staging of that. But I mean, there's theater. There it is for you, like what, and then you see it too, the creepiness. The ship is full of nooks and crannies, and it's got lots of pipes, and it has kind of creepiness in it. Mm-hmm. So there's all these things that make the storytelling and the horror come alive because of the use of set and costume, and what that does to us watching. Yeah, right. Those movies are some of my faves. I just love those movies.
That's fantastic. That right there, that one scene could be an entire opera.
It could totally be. Yeah, don't do that without do something in the ilk. Don't get stuck in a copyright thing.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But yes, a Ripley-esque. I would totally. I would love to sing a scene where I get to blow an alien to bits. Please, where's that?
That's gonna. We'll get you a flamethrower or something.
Awesome.
Yes. It's do you know flamethrowers? They're illegal to use, but you can build one. They're legal to be built, I think. Or is it illegal to use? What is it?
Huh.
Or no, you can't buy one, but you can build one.
That seems very strange.
I think. I could be totally off on this. Someone's
also, how funny. I mean, that's a strange place to draw a line, people. I'm just saying. I'm not saying I'm pro flamethrower purchasing.
Actually, I think I'm wrong because Tesla, I think, had a limited flamethrower for sale.
So random. Buy our car, or if you don't have as much money, buy this flamethrower.
Exactly.
There could be a prop flamethrower. I'm just I'm throwing it out there. That could happen.
You're throwing it out there?
I'm throwing it.
Pun intended.
There could be many different permutations. It could be a futuristic laser flamethrower with some lighting design. There could be many things.
We could do something where it's a leaf blower, and then putting yellow cloth at the end to replicate flames.
100%. There are so many solutions.
We're creating this opera right now, Lisa.
Yes, absolutely. I'm into it. Yes.
The people are going to see the manifestation and creation of an opera right before their eyes, or their ears if they're listening.
Perfect. Yes, I love that.
This is a pandemic 2021 way of composing.
Yeah, exactly. And what's better for virtual pandemic 2021 than sci-fi? Sure, that makes perfect sense to me.
That's true. That's very true.
That's thematically appropriate.
What sci-fi have you seen lately that you're geeking over?
Whoa, I'm always seeing sci-fi. So we're rewatching Star Trek Voyager, and it's getting good. We're at the end of season 3, starting season 4. Mm-hmm. I'm a big Voyager fan. Seasons 1 and 2 can be a little bit, they're still finding their feet. A lot of things I like, though, even in those seasons. So things are heating up. We've got the Borg happening. And we've got some Janeway and Chakotay butting heads happening, which is nice to see them actually having distinct characters. Because Chakotay's kind of he's a little subservient for the first 2 seasons. So we did that. We watched the old Superman 1 and 2 with Christopher Reeve.
Ooh, Marlon Brando, right?
I'm going to see if I can get this right. The Richard Donner cut, which is different than the cut that was in theatrical. When I guess I'm going to get this so wrong. my fiance's going to tell me if I'm wrong. There was a problem with Marlon Brando and they cut him out of the theatrical cut. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
He's nodding. Okay. Yes. So then later they have released this cut with the restored Richard Donner vision with Marlon Brando in it. So that's pretty deep in the geek weeds. But that was really fun to rewatch that very iconic, I mean, I remember as kids, my parents watching Superman and being like, come watch the, when he flew, or come watch when the baby's in the kind of crystal
Yeah, I
ship
remember
and
that
things.
scene.
And we were always so excited to see the cool special effects. So yeah, so those are some of my latest sci-fi stuff. Are you a sci-fi person too?
Not particularly. I
No.
enjoy it. I don't focus exclusively on it or anything like that, but I think it's so fascinating. I mean, Blade Runner was a phenomenal movie.
Oh yeah.
That monologue at the end where he's in the rain and he's like, I forget what he says, but he says Tannhauser Gates though. I remember that, and I was like, oh, Wagner. Like,
Oh wait, right. Yeah, isn't that
yeah.
strange? Yeah, yeah. Big kind of just the way that's permeated the culture. Another geeky thing we've been doing is there's a board game called Clank in Space that has like little game pieces going around on a ship trying to steal things. And all the different cards that you encounter of different aliens are different sort of plays on famous characters, you know. Furry smuggler is kind of like a throw up to Chewbacca, Wookiee, the friend of Han Solo in Star Wars. So there's all these like inner in jokes. So that's been another very geeky thing we've been doing.
Is that sort of like a meta thing in a way, or is it like they're trying to take the Star Wars world and like turn it into something different? Or
no, I think it's a meta thing. Like it's it's like a sci-fi board game for sci-fi geeks, and so they're having fun with like every card that you pick. I mean, there's one that's like it's a lady in a loader like Ripley in the second Aliens, and it's some piece of equipment you can buy and use, and they've got some kind of homage sort of name that it doesn't call it Ripley's loader, but that's what it is. So yeah, I would say it's meta. It's like a big old tribute, kind of like Munchkin. This is a card game that some people play, that we've played, that has a lot of like Dungeons and Dragons references.
Have you played Dungeons and Dragons?
Not for a long time, but yeah, I played it for a while. Like in maybe like middle school, probably was the prime Dungeons and Dragons age, because then I started to do theater productions and I didn't have time anymore. Yeah, but we would play with my uncles. My uncles were big D&D people, and so they would always make us scenarios, and we'd go to Smog's lair and we'd go to fight the orcs and all these fun things. Yeah.
That's I never played it, but like I love the whole idea that you just create this thing and like you revisit it, it can go on for as long as you want to, right? Is that that's so amazing. I could probably sit and watch people play it and just enjoy that so much. Like
yeah. It's fun. It's the most fun, I think, too, for me was always when you were sort of using it to have a good time and not getting too stuck on like your die rolls and accidentally dying and having the game end, or too much of a stickler for things. Like it really matters like who you play with, I think.
That's really, I have this interesting thought. Have you ever kind of connected the whole way of playing a game, maybe not like the an actual literal game, but I don't even know how to ask this question. This is going to be tough. Basically connecting playing board games to composing music, like your process for composing and the way you play a board game. Does that make sense?
Interesting. I could totally see it, especially like if people, I think especially in the Dungeons and Dragons, if someone was like the dungeon master who's sort of creating the scenario, and sort of laying out things, that events that may occur that'll get triggered, I think that could be very aligned with ideas about how you compose music and how you construct, and it's interactive, right? You have other players and they're, imposing their, not imposing, that's the wrong word, contributing their ideas and their personality, and in a lot of ways with more, like more say than a typical classical performer might, unless they're playing a piece of aleatoric music. So yeah, I think why not? Yeah, I'm all about that.
That's cool.
That could be a really fun piece too. That could be like a Dungeons and Dragons piece could be really fun.
Yeah.
You could have like a narrator and you could have like a theme, and then it could be aleatoric, like people could roll and then it could change what happens. That could be fun.
Lisa, I feel like we're laying out all kinds of great ideas for operas. I gotta say.
I love it.
This
Yes.
is like
Go forth and write.
anyone who wants to write an opera can watch this episode and just extract all these ideas.
Yes. And look, all of them so much more interesting than like, you know, retelling some kind of 18th century heteronormative romance. So yes, please.
It's bringing the contemporary, like you were saying before, bringing the contemporary to light.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the artistic realm of music.
Yeah, why not?
Especially something like D&D. Like, I don't know if there's any music that's ever been written using like that as the basis. Maybe.
I don't know. I know there's a movie. Isn't there a movie like some bad? I think there's probably like a bad B movie about Dungeons and Dragons.
That's a good question. There probably is. I know that show Stranger Things like started with D&D, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, that always, I love that reference in there because it's so, I can so relate. Yeah, but I mean, like, who cares if someone has made a crappy B movie called Dungeons and Dragons? Don't watch it. Just write something cool and new and awesome, you know, and yeah, don't feel boxed in by that, people.
Okay,
I believe in you.
Creative juices flowing.
Yeah, totally.
What do you have any sort of I guess like method or process to tease out creative ideas when you're feeling stuck?
Well, I mean, one of my processes is just to have like time tomorrow to come back and try again. You know, that's one thing. It's really different for me, the stage of composing where there's idea generation from nothing versus once there's some components and we're connecting or editing. Those are two different processes. So from nothing, that's where you get inspiration maybe and a bunch of cool stuff flows, or I can have days where nothing that I write is good or it's very painful and slow. So the process for me for teasing that out is to just have time set aside so that it doesn't feel urgent. You know, in the completely blank page moments, time crunch does not induce creativity for me. So yeah, and one other strategy I use in those moments is we'll write 10 ideas down and it's okay if they all suck. You know, because sometimes the sucky ideas have to get out, you know, and then just kind of clear. That's one thing. And then, yeah, come back tomorrow is another thing, and sort of trusting. And my own cycle of like energy and exhaustion is really important to pay attention to too. There are days when maybe I have a 2-hour block I could use to start a piece or start a new section. But if I'm really worn out, if I've already used up a bunch of mental energy and sort of higher level like brain energy and I'm just tapped out, it's not a good day to do that. You know, later on in the process, then it's a little different. If it's connecting things or if it's editing things or if it's coming up with a better version of something, then it's a lot more for me like writing an essay or something where you might brainstorm 10 different variations and eventually find the one you like best, you know, or it might help to zoom out and sort of sing through or play through the piece and sort of get a sense of the flow and go, that's the part that's crunchy that I don't like, or that's the part that seems too long, or that's the part that doesn't feel complete. We sort of read through and experience and imagine what it's going to be like for the audience to encounter it for the first time, sort of zooming out. Yeah. And then also, I mean, I find this is more new for me. When I was younger, it was very hard for me to write long pieces. Lately, the last 3 or 4 years, I found that one idea, I have way more tools to exploit that idea and get a lot of mileage out of it. And so another thing that I find is often the case is that when I'm sitting there feeling like I need to write something new and what goes here or what connects this, it's actually a lot of times some things already exist that I can use. You know, And so just kind of mining what's already there. My toolkit for that is so much deeper now than it used to be, or it comes easier, or I see things more clearly. So those are some of the things that I do.
There's so much really good stuff in there. I particularly like what you said about time as a source of creativity. I don't think I've heard anyone explain it like that. And that is such a it makes so much sense. I know there are people who like thrive under deadlines, but I know I'm not like that though. I'm like you, where I need to have that space.
Yeah.
I need to have that time, that space where I can kind of sift through it and try things out and research, you know.
Yeah, research, totally. Oh my gosh. I mean, for me, like I often feel like there's this pre-writing incubation period where like some of the parameters for the piece are set, like in length about and performing forces, and maybe some information about what the performers love, or if there's a need for the piece, like we need a closer, we want it to be up tempo, or whatever those are. We're like, if I went, cool, all that information on Monday, go write the piece Tuesday, it's like too soon. It really like kind of needs to be, it works best. I'll get the best out of myself if it's sort of incubating and I'm like listening to the recordings from the ensemble and I'm looking up weird techniques for the oboe and hearing what does that sound like? How's that notated?
Yeah.
You know, and then it's like the egg timer goes off, you know, or I'm a vegan, the tofu timer goes off or whatever. And it's like, okay, now we have like enough stuff to write something cool.
Yeah. Oh my God. I think we're so similar with like our process, so cool. And like, I'm the same way where I think I spend a little bit too much time in the research stage, honestly, but I don't know if that's a procrastination technique or just my modus operandi, you know, but yeah, I mean, like letting all these things sort of fester, you know, and teasing out the little aspects of like, well, what about this fingering, or like, well, this note sounds really cool. What if this note's on top? You know, like, I don't know, just experimenting, I guess. But yeah, that's really interesting that we have a very similar approach like that.
I love that. Yeah, and I mean, I love deadlines in terms of just as a busy person. It is difficult to get around to the thing that has no deadline, you know, but when it's the raw generation of ideas, you know, that may take a little time.
That's totally true. There's a book that I had read a while ago called The Creative Habit by Twyla Sharp. That she has some really, really fascinating ways to harness or like tease for creativity.
I love that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to. I know I've heard of that book before, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I'll have to go find it.
One day you'll come across it and you'll be like, oh, there we go. You know? There's always those lists. There's always like the list of books you got to read, the list of movies you got to watch, the songs you got to listen to.
Sure.
You know, it's like, and especially with all these streaming services too. Like for me, in movies, it's like just building up.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're now in like this zone of like, I'm sorry, if I have Netflix and Amazon and it's not on one of those, like, will I watch it? Yeah. Maybe someday, maybe not. You know, especially if then they're like, and we're not going to release it on like for rental, you know, on Amazon Prime or on, you know, any of this one-time rental things, you know. It's like, well, it's too bad for you then.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Guess I won't be watching your movie for a while.
I'm at the point where I actually want to start getting DVDs again. I want to own the copy. I want to have it, you know.
You're a man after my fiance's own heart. My fiance Mike has a large DVD and Blu-ray collection, a very extensive library for this very reason.
Oh my God, I like him already. He sounds like a great guy.
So he is. He's pretty great.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll slowly it will build, but good on him. Good on him for being ahead of the game.
It's been great this year. I mean, it's always great, but it's like, oh, we can really entertain ourselves.
Totally. The right year to do that. Like,
yes, it's been such a luxury.
it's, well, I don't want to say it's the right year. It's the year that necessitated that, I would say.
Yeah, and it's just, it's been really fun to escape into some fantastical worlds and put our feet up and, you know, sort of pamper ourselves with a flick is really fun.
Yeah, it really is. I'm with you on that. As you can see, like, this podcast just kind of floats, you know, like,
I love it. It's so great. It's so casual.
There's no serious structure or anything like that. But with that being said, like, I want to make sure that we talk about something that you want to bring up or like have a conversation on. So I know you have all kinds of projects and stuff that you're doing, and I would love to hear or anything that you want to mention.
Oh my gosh, thanks for asking. Yeah, so the big thing this month, we're in March. The big thing this month is the opera festival that Kendra Leonard, a wonderful librettist, and I are putting on in 3 weeks. It starts March 22nd to 26th. And this is a festival of new mini operas. It's called the One Voice Micro Opera Festival. And each opera is for one singer and nothing else, unaccompanied. They're self-contained stories. And they will drop one per day for those 5 days as a YouTube premiere at 5 o'clock Pacific each day. And we've got I'm doing one about Catherine Switzer, who's a personal heroine of mine. She was the first woman to run the Boston Marathon as a registered runner. Another woman ran the year before unregistered. So I'm doing an opera about that historic run. She was attacked on the run by the race director. So this dramatizes that. We've got an opera about an opera singer in his home wondering what is going to happen during the pandemic and what is life going to be like, and, you know, the meaning of all of this. So very kind of inspired by this singer's own life. We've got an opera about this 17th century French noblewoman who challenged an intruder to a duel under the name of her husband. And
Hell yeah.
Pants, and she fought him off. So we've got fantastic singers from across the US who will be performing these. People are coming up with really creative ways to do the tech and the filming with just, you know, whatever we have available. So they're really their own directors and lighters and costumers, you know, with Kendra and me helping as much as we can through Zoom. And then at the end of all of that, there's a fun talkback reception that people can register and come to on Zoom, where they can ask us all the questions and, you know, digitally raise a toast to the performers and the creators and have a little fun with us. So that's the thing that I'm really excited about this month.
That sounds amazing. I am like,
thanks.
I'm like, whew, let's do it.
Yay! Awesome. Well, I hope you tune in. It'll be super fun. We're doing sort of a dry run of some of our filming techniques. Yesterday, Mike, my fiance, and I he was trying out different ways of running alongside me or having the camera on a bike and rolling it alongside me, and different, you know, home tech movie creation for mine. So that'll be exciting to put into practice as we do the production.
Totally.
So it's really fun.
I love the DIY aspect that you're you know, like you just said with the camera and everything.
Thanks.
That's like, you know, like just creating the opportunity and making it happen. You know, like you could try to hire someone to do it who has all the skills and all the equipment and stuff, but it's like, well, that might be a couple $1,000s. Like,
yeah, I mean, our starting budget for this thing is $0. You know, it's a passion project for all of us. It came about because, you know, we wanted to create something and we missed performing, particularly opera that is story and that is, you know, it's costume and set and drama in a different way. And that is going to be probably one of the last art forms that can safely come back, because grand opera is a bunch of people on stage and a bunch of people in the pit exhaling all over each other for 3 hours. And that's just not going to be safe for a while, I think. So this is one way of like just going really granular, like what is a one person drama, and what kind of stories do people want to tell with that? And I'm a big proponent of singers singing unaccompanied repertoire. That's been a passion of mine for the last 7 years with the One Voice Project, which is a concert and score curation project that I have for unaccompanied concert repertoire. So this is sort of a natural extension of that, to break it into theatrical opera production.
Right. Wow. That's I love hearing about this.
Thanks.
You said this was a passion project. Was it something that you and who was the other person again?
Oh, Kendra Leonard is the librettist.
Kendra Leonard.
For all 5 of them. Yeah. So we're the dynamic creative team.
I love that. Was she at the tech setting like a boss? Was that?
Yes, she did
Okay.
come and hang out with us on that, which was so exciting. I loved that we had some, in addition to people who kind of identify first as composers as their like main creative output, that we had librettists and we had some singers, like people who identify mainly as a singer right now. We had some people with different backgrounds. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that, and I thought it was so great having her there with having that perspective. And one of the things that she said, which I think all of us need to be reminded, was if just reach out to a librettist, just simply reaching out. It's a simple thing, but I think a lot of people have trouble with it. I know I do sometimes. So
what's so challenging as artists, everybody says collaborate, everybody says be interdisciplinary, and our institutions where many of us train are not actually designed for that. And those periods of time, especially at the times in the programs where we get to make our creative work happen, the self-conducted kind of like those happen in the second half of undergrad, and maybe the second half of a grad program where everybody's running around like a chicken with their head cut off trying to get things done. It's not, again, time, right? So like we have to find a way to make the time, and sometimes that isn't aided as much as it could be by the institutions where a lot of artists, not all artists, but where many artists train. So like anything, if you are starting from I know 0 poets, it is overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
But then come tweet at me and I'll introduce you to some, and then they'll introduce you to some, and not all of their poetry will be the stuff you want to set right now. Maybe it will be in the future. Like anything, if you start at very few or 0, it'll take a little time, but it doesn't have to take as long as people think.
That's exactly been one of the things that I've struggled with, because I don't really even read novels or poems or anything. So even looking at a poem, I'm like, I'm not entirely sure what I'm looking at. And
totally.
I'll have certain ideas of what might be happening, and that for me is often a barrier that I have trouble getting past even. But that's such a good thing to mention about having like contemporaries, like you were saying before, about talking about contemporary issues and stuff, which then right there can lead to the collaboration of working with someone who is a contemporary. And because you work with Kendra, being able to have that conversation about what should this be about. I mean, you can try to find some poem that's already been written, but then is it gonna be the content that you want it to be? The word,
who knows? Maybe,
right? Yeah. But as a way to sort of bypass that, like commissioning a librettist to be like, hey, can you write something for me?
Yeah. And one of the wonderful things I think too, as a composer, where so much of our work is kind of often alone, and then we have this piece and it's maybe performed once and then it's our baby to try to get another performance, is like, imagine having another parent. It's so great. Imagine, I can't tell you the number of times I've sent like Kendra a page or two. I'm like, here's kind of the rough draft of the first chunk, and I don't know how I'm feeling about it. And she's like, this is so great. And it's so wonderful to like not be in the trenches alone, and just to have another person with ideas about ways to put the piece out into the world or to keep its life going. And That has been so wonderful.
I
You
like
know?
that. Yeah, that's really great, especially with everything that we've been living this last year and the pandemic, having someone
Mhm.
to like just to connect with, but also like you said, having that sort of reassurance in the way, you know?
Totally. Yeah, then and you know, the process of creating something, there's just so much love and work and blood and sweat and tears that often go into that.
Hmm.
So it is nice to be reminded you're not the only one, and that maybe to be affirmed in things that you're having doubts about, or maybe to be affirmed that, like, yeah, you know, I think you're right, that part's not so great, but the rest of this is great, you know. I mean, like, whatever, however you set that relationship up and figure out that working relationship, it's really, really different than writing a piece, you know, into the wee hours of the night all by my onesies, which I've done before, and it's fine too.
Yeah.
But this is really fun work, and it is also great to brainstorm. I mean, we've for every opera we've written together, and we've done 5 of these, and then another piece that's being premiered by Opera Elect this summer, COVID willing, depending on how the tech and all that works out. But like, um, so that's with 6. You know, we've always talked about the plots together, and we've always talked about the characters. And I don't know, you know, every librettist composer relationship will be different, but that's been really a wonderful source of inspiration and has clarified a lot of the themes that I'm most passionate about by talking through those with Kendra, and by finding where our passions of storytelling overlap.
Mm, that's so great. It's
Yeah.
having that sort of partner in crime, you know?
Yeah, totally. So you can find that. You can totally find that too, you know?
Definitely. I love that. Well, I think this is a pretty decent spot for us to close it off. What do you think?
Oh, of course. Yeah, totally. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I want to make sure we get everything in there that you want to tack on or anything. So, is there any other projects or events or social media things you want to mention or?
Oh, wow, that's so sweet of you. Gosh, you know, if any flutists out there are checking out, there's some different flute festivals that are going on where Rose Bishop, flute and piccolo performer, amazing, is performing 2 of my pieces at the Greater Portland Area Flute Society in April. Their Flute Fest, so you can check that out and hang out with Rose there. And those pieces that she's performing are on the EP that we released about a month ago of Wind and Waves. So if you want to hear those in advance, you can check that out on Bandcamp. And then, you know, if you're a composer who wants to chat all things writing for voices, and also the business side of composing, of getting your music in front of people, whether that's vocal music or other kinds of music, because I actually write all kinds of music. Um, yeah, come hit me up on social media and start a conversation. And I'd love to know what's going on with people, because those are all things that I'm passionate about helping composers with.
Fantastic. That's awesome. I'm so glad to have this conversation with you, Lisa. Thank you for being on the podcast. This was great.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.